I still believe, so I'm gonna trust your love no matter what. Gonna live my life for you, live my life for you. Whenever I'm walking, talking, and everything I say and do. Yeah. Gonna live my life for you, live my life for you. Wherever I'm going, you are going with me too. Gonna live my life for you. Gonna live my life for you. When I'm weak, I know you're strong. Won't be afraid, you'll be right here through it all. When I'm weak, I know you're strong. Won't be afraid, you'll be right here through it all. Gonna live my life for you, live my life for you. Wherever I'm walking, talking, and everything I say and do. Gonna live my life for you, live my life for you. Whenever I'm walking, talking, and everything I say and do. Gonna live my life for you, live my life for you. Wherever I'm going, you are going with me too. Gonna live my life for you. Gonna live my life for you. Gonna live my life for you. Gonna live my life for
Hello, everybody. Erica here, and welcome back to another week in the STEAM Lab. Whenever you're learning new things, experimenting, inventing, or anything else one might do in a lab, you need to make sure you have faith. Faith is trusting in what you can't see because of what you can see. And you also have to have something to work with. Today, I asked a few people to let me borrow their glasses for the day. Cheers! Just kidding. Eyeglasses, not water glasses. I see you. Okay, these are reading glasses. They're supposed to help you see things better close up. Let's see. Oh, wow. Yep. They really work. I see things a lot more clearly. It's like focused, blurry. Focus, blurry. But look what happens when I put on these glasses. They're for someone who is really farsighted. Wow! I can't see anything. I can't see anything. It's like blurry. Focus. Blurry. Focused. Isn't that wild? There are a lot of different kinds of glasses. And the reason is because there are a lot of different kinds of people. Not everyone sees the same way. And today's story is about when a guy named Paul met some people who saw things a little bit differently than he did. Go see for yourself. You see what I did there? Okay. Meanwhile, I've got some more glasses to try on. Whoa. These are X-ray glasses. I can see my bones! Just kidding. Seriously though, when did I get that freckle?
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Acts, chapter 17, verses 16 through 34.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm one of the volunteers here at Fearless Church, and I'm just really glad to be getting back where I can talk to you guys again and spend some time really just sharing what's on my heart. And It's really great to be here, and I'm excited about today. Today I'm going to bring a story that I really like. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. They kind of all are, but here we are. So first off, we got to kind of figure out where we're at. Now, we're in the New Testament, which means this is after Jesus has come, and we're actually in the book of Acts. Now, Acts records all the stories of the church when it's first getting started. See, Jesus had come, he had lived his life, he died, and then he rose again. And he left. He didn't stay around. He left his disciples in charge of starting this whole church thing. And so they went to all of Israel, telling about how people could have a relationship with God because of what Jesus had done. Now, that didn't make him a lot of friends at the time. In fact, it really caused some problems. You see, the leaders there didn't like it, so they found people to go and persecute the church, to hunt them down, to arrest them, to, well, kill them. And one of the people we talked about last week was a guy named Stephen, and he is actually killed for his faith. And one of the guys that's there is a guy named Saul. Now, there's a lot of things to say about Saul, and that's a whole lesson or several in itself. But short story is that God gets a hold of Saul in an amazing way and turns Saul from being one of the biggest persecutors of the church to one of the church's biggest allies, one of the people that goes out and is teaching everybody they can find about Jesus. So at this point, we're still following Paul, and he is taken off. He is no longer in Israel. He's actually up in Greece, which is miles away from Israel, and he is teaching the people there about Jesus. Early in the chapter, we are at a town called Thessalonica, and some bad things happen. Paul gets arrested, thrown into jail, all kinds of stuff, gets run out of town. The kind of stuff he would have been doing a couple years ago, he's now having done to him. But fortunately, he's able to go to Berea, which is the next town over, and almost the same stuff happens. He gets persecuted. He gets run out of town, particularly by some leaders who don't like the fact that he's telling people that they can have a relationship with God that doesn't require them. So, Paul heads to the next town down the list. It's Athens. Athens is at the time one of the centers of Greek thought. All the smartest people are coming around, listening to the newest ideas, talking, debating, learning, just overall having a time where they can experience the new ideas that they're seeing. And Paul walks right into the middle of this. The first thing he does, he heads over to the synagogues like he typically does to find his fellow Jewish folks, and he talks to them a little bit about Jesus and what he's doing and tries to tell them that this is the way, this is the next thing, this is the big news that they have for him. Then he hits the marketplace. Now, the marketplace is where all the cool kids hang out, all the smarty guys go and talk and hear the newest ideas. And if they liked your idea, they'd invite you upstairs to the Areopagus. Now, you have to understand, the Areopagus is kind of like up on the hill there, where all the really smart, fancy people would hang out. And so all these philosophers are there debating the best ideas of the day. And so they bring in Paul. And Paul, he's a pretty smart guy himself. He looks around, he sees the philosophers, he sees the Epicureans that believe that, you know, life is all for good food and good times and good people. And he sees them. He also sees the Stoics who believe that pleasure is fleeting and we should try to make sure that we focus on the somber, important things of life. And honestly, it's a hard crowd. How do you talk to these two crowds in a way that they're both going to listen to you? So Paul thinks it through. And he had noticed something. He had noticed something about these Greeks. You see, the Greeks worshipped a lot of gods. And by a lot of gods, I mean a lot of gods. Some estimates put it into the tens of thousands. They had a god for everything. A god for healing. A god for maybe better harvests. A god for having babies. A god for dying. A god for everything that you could imagine. They had one. And furthermore, worshiping in Greece was difficult. You see, the problem with these gods is that they're a little jealous, and at least that's what the Greeks thought. And so you would make an offering to a god if you wanted them to help you out, but you might upset another god. Or maybe you did something accidentally that made a god mad, and then you had to figure out which one it was and why he was mad at you, or what you needed to do to get her back on your side. And it was tiring and it was exhausting. They were also super paranoid that maybe in the middle of all of this, they missed one. Like, how bad would that be that, something new came up and they knew there was a god for it, but they forgot to make one. So they had an altar. They had an altar with no statues, no signals on it, just to say to the unknown God, the God that we forgot, just in case. So Paul knew all this. Paul's a smart guy. He's able to look through and he's able to figure out exactly what he needs to do. So he starts off and he says, listen, you men of Athens, I see that you are very religious. He wasn't wrong. They were probably very religious. They did a lot of religious things every day. I can't imagine anybody more religious to them. They were wrong, but they were religious. And then he says, listen, I was out walking around and I saw all of your altars, all of your statues, all of your shrines and temples to these gods. And I even noticed you had one to the unknown God. I want to tell you about him today. Now, the people of Greece would have been really interested in this because it's a new idea. These people love to get new ideas. So they're on the edge of their seats going, okay, what has he got for us? What's he going to tell us? Who do we need to make a new statue for? And then we can make a new statue and we can leave the unknown God for the next unknown God. We'll get there. And Paul then says, listen, this is the one true God. The God that made heaven and earth. I want to talk to you about this God now. That would have been a little weird. You see, they thought they knew this story. They thought they were pretty clear on what was going to happen there, but Paul's got a plan. Let's just see how this plays out. So then Paul looks at them and he starts quoting their teachers to them. He says, listen, you've heard it said, in him we live and move and have our being. He said, you've heard it said that we are indeed his offspring. These are words not from the Bible, but from the writings of Greek philosophers who are telling you about a God that they didn't quite understand. So Paul's got him. He's talking to him. He's like, listen, this is the story. This is the big thing to know. This is what it's all about. This God came. He lived here. He didn't sin. He died for you. And if you believe in him, you can have eternal life. And that's the message that Paul used. Now, some of the people that heard him, they didn't agree with him. They thought he was maybe crazy. Maybe he was just wrong. But they took a minute and they listened to him and they moved on. But a few of the people out there, listened. And when they heard Paul talking, they thought to themselves, this is something that means something. And we actually have recorded a couple of the names of people, of Dionysus, of Damaris, these names of people we know from the Bible who came to believe in Jesus because of what Paul did that day. Not only did they come to believe, that they actually says it started a church in Athens that taught other people about God. So there's a little moment where the church takes another step forward, takes a little bit of new ground, comes into a new town in a new way, and starts building believers there. So that was 2,000 years ago. Why are we still talking about it? Why is that still part of what we want you to know today? Well, there's a couple things that you need to know there. First off is that God can use anybody. It's part of Paul's big story is that God used someone who used to persecute his people to become one of the best preachers for his people. And that's amazing. I mean, I am not perfect. I don't know if that's news to any of you, and if it is, sorry to ruin that illusion, but I'm not perfect. I've sinned. I've done things I wish I hadn't, and God probably wishes I hadn't too. But you know what? God can still use me. And you know what? God can still use you. God can still use you to go out and represent him, no matter where you're from, no matter how old you are, no matter what you've done. You can still be used by God to do amazing things. The second thing that's really important is that Paul is able to meet people where they are. You see, he doesn't wait for people to go to all the classes and to learn all the stuff about God before he says they're worthy enough to learn more about him and to follow him. No. Paul learns about them. He learns about what they're interested in, what they're afraid of, what they know, what they don't know, and he uses that to tell them more about Jesus. It's amazing to me that Paul was able to quote their philosophers and their books to them in a way that made them interested in what he knew. Because a lot of times people don't just want to hear you talk. They want to hear that you know about them, that you care about them, that you've taken the time to understand them before they're going to take the time to understand you. And Paul shows us that in this book. So then, what's the big idea? The big idea here is that you can help others know Jesus. That's it. And it's an amazingly great story because it's simple, you know. It doesn't require a lot of you. Many of you probably know enough, or at least more than some people you know about Jesus, and you can tell your friends, your family, those around you that you know something about this person, about God, that maybe they should know too. And you can tell it to them in a way that is kind and loving and shows that you took the time to understand where they're at, what they're afraid of, what they're interested in, and you can relate that to them. Because you know what? Jesus relates to everybody. I mean, think about it. So many people you know are afraid. Maybe they're worried about all the stuff that's going on out there, and, you know, it's kind of a season where there's a lot of that going around. Maybe they're worried about the next school year. Maybe they're worried about just what they're going to do this summer. But you know what? God can meet those fears. And if you see those and you encourage them and you say, hey, listen, I understand you're scared, but let me tell you about God. Well, you might have a way to really encourage them, to help them, and to teach them more about him. So that's what I got today for you. I'm really excited for you. Look for ways to go out there in the next few weeks, wherever you are and wherever you're not, and make sure you can listen to people. Make sure you understand where they're at, what they're feeling, what they're excited about, what they're scared about, and see how you can use that to tell them about God. I look forward to hearing what happens whenever we're back together, and I can't wait to that day. But in the meantime, just go. Be excited.
I know it's a banana, but it just looks like a blurry yellow blob. Whoa! It's hard to focus when you can't see clearly, but I think it's important to try and see things from another person's point of view, like Paul and the people in Athens. They believed in different gods than Paul. That's why Paul tried to see things how they saw things, so he could tell them about Jesus in a way they'd understand. He told them about the living, one true God who created the whole world and everything in it. And he told them that God proved how powerful he was by bringing a man back from the dead. That man was God's son, Jesus. Many of the people from Athens had never heard of anything like that before. Some thought Paul was kind of crazy, but others wanted to hear more. And Paul was able to help them know Jesus the way he knew Jesus. That's something we can do too. It's the one thing to remember today. You can help others know Jesus. That can be easy if you're talking to someone who sees things the same way you do. But when someone sees things differently, when they believe differently, or when they've had different experiences than you, it helps to try and see things from their point of view.
Ah, yes, I see what you're saying now.
The best thing to do is to try to keep it real. Be honest about what Jesus has done for you. And it's not just in what you say, You can help people know Jesus by what you do, too. When you treat people with love, respect, and kindness, they can see the love of Jesus through you. Everyone's different, and we all see things just a little bit differently. So I think it makes sense to try to see things the way other people see them. And you don't even have to change your glasses to do it. I'll see you next time. Bye. See you guys later. Oh, hold on. That's a table. All right.